I'm a dance choreographer. In recent years, I've sort of been exploring the notion and the role of dance in its social setting in society. I felt that it's fairly limited the way we treat dance in its institutional arrangements, as in dance school as well as in theaters, especially in the arts, not so much in the clubs or in how people dance at home. And I thought, how could that be addressed? And it's probably this notion of relational aspects of art, relational aspects of bodies, of humans, as well as embodied aspects are more in the discourse in fine arts and in other aspects of society. So my practice automatically shifted without much wanting to do so into the fine arts. And for the last years, the most project has been kind of overlapping, either when people would come from the dance world, they would think it's a fine arts project. If people come from fine arts, they would think it's a performance arts project. And very often they are situated in museums or in galleries or in alternative spaces. And very rarely I work in a black box or in a proscenium arch, because I believe this to be an outdated model that belongs to the courts, and we got rid of the kings for a good reason. And recently I've done a work here in Greece, which was my first work in Greece. For the last 10 years, I did one for Proxima Dance Company in 2001, I think, called Proxima's Drift. And then I haven't been back. And I've done one for the Benaki Museum, which was an installation called Parliament in April 2014. And now I'm doing a work for the Athens Festival called Jerusalem, Choreography for Greece. So quite bohemian in a sense, all the classical training that one receives. And generally I've been drawn to dance very early on. I've been a fairly decent tap dancer, and then went over and did ballet and jazz dance and modern dance. And then when I realized that I just won't be a great ballet dancer, I just stopped to study fine arts, which was my other love, painting and drawing. And then at some point in around 20, I realized this is not going to be it, sitting alone in a studio painting. And I really felt drawn towards choreography. I had no idea what a choreographer is, what they really do, but I thought I have to make dances, I have to do this. And I wrote a lot of letters and got no reply. I had no idea how to do this. At that time, there were no real courses out there. I went to London finally and found the Laban Center, studied there, and very early on had my first touring company, the Berrydale Opera House, which was quite successful in England in a small scale. Like we're talking, I was 22 and touring Europe, and it was a very good experience and learning experience of how dance companies work. I then went into also commercial business for dance, for multimedia events, working for different companies. And pretty much when it all went down, as in financially, when the company couldn't sustain itself after a few years, I was about to give up the whole dance aspect, the whole choreography aspect. And by pure chance, I ended up getting a contract from William Forsythe to do as a choreographer, which was really coming out of the blue. It was one of those things. It just happened. I got a contract, and for 2 years I would be guest choreographer for Ballet Frankfurt, and that obviously helped one's career along and helped to kind of, I felt really I was being mentored by Forsythe, which was a great honor and a great process, and I was exposed to really a whole group of great artists around. I met Steve Falk, who I'm still working very closely, who's my dramaturg there. And after that I went to Ireland and became a district director of DACTA, and decided basically to build up with my artistic team a really somewhat utopian cultural organization. I thought cultural organizations are, especially in dance, they're outmoded, they always work at the same model, they don't respond to society, they're not really of value much except within a capitalist framework. And so I decided to change that and build a different institution. I was very lucky because it was the Celtic Tiger and there was a lot of capital streaming through Ireland, so there weren't much questions asked as to what one was doing. And I built DACTA as this, with buildings, as a real institution that worked differently in many ways. And we didn't tour that much, we didn't produce every year new work, we just did a lot of things, experimenting on all different sides, from work with people with special needs to in-depth research, movement research, to publishing research, to inviting people in, kind of wild tribal years in a way as an institution. And after 8 years, this came to an end, and I moved to Athens, to Greece, with my wife and my kid, to actually use Athens as a base and work from here internationally as a choreographer and as a teacher. I very much enjoy teaching choreography and giving master classes, so I do that all over the world. Of course, I've chosen Greece as a base for many different reasons, some personal, some professional. I find it very interesting to be at this point of time in this society when you feel like there's a rupture taking place, there's something breaking inside of the social contract that people felt they had with each other. And now as money gets tight and the squeeze and the arts are kind of dispersing because there is just no money to support it either, it's just a fascinating time for everybody to be here and to work. Because the work is, you do not do things for money, because there is really no money. And that changes the ball game in a very interesting way for me. In many places you do things for commissions, whereas here that's not the case. You have to do things that you really, really want to do because nobody will pay you for it in a traditional way, I feel. And that's a very interesting situation. That also means you can work much freer. You're not answerable, really, to anybody. I feel very much courtless. In a really choreographers are traditionally bound throughout history to a court. And most artists are as well. And in the olden days, it was the kings that had their choreographers and the different courts that had their choreographers, and then it got dispersed, it got more, but every state now has their choreographers. Every European state has a handful of choreographers they support, they nurture, but they're also answerable to that state. And so they're really just changed their court. And this state of being courtless, to have no court to answer to, is an extremely privileged state. Artistically, economically, it's not so privileged. However, it's something I think for a few years to really explore this notion. And I think we can also learn from that courtlessness to think, I don't choose per se. I let things stew, and at some point something comes up. I'm very interested in political political subject nature of dance and choreography, what this means to bring a discourse, a kind of discussion, a revelation of human nature, about the human condition into the body and through the body, rather than always keeping it on a rational level. And that kind of defines my work, together with interests in social aspects and really somatic, as in how the body is integrating into the mind and the mind into the body, and how this is actually this one recursive mess. I'm interested in these subject matters, and usually I start a work and then it just develops and grows and cultivates, and they usually take 6-7 years to really become a work. They start with some inkling, and then I go this direction and I realize this direction is not so interesting. So they're growing. Like I like to prefer to keep a kind of organic cultural production going. So I'm not so keen on producing every year. For example, I don't think I've produced a new big work for 3 years, and now I've produced 2 within a few months. But they have been both stewing and developing and over years and years and years. So and when it's ready, it's ready. I'm very much convinced that the choreographers should work like authors, like the best authors, like James Joyce, who wrote only a few number of books. He wrote them over 15 years, and when it was ready, it was ready. It wasn't ready when the publisher said you have to be ready. It was ready when it was ready. And nobody needs more than 4 works of each choreographer in a lifetime. That's my general kind of belief.